Miss your favorite show? Download the podcast at kcaaradio.com.
KCAA. Live and in color from the NBC News radio broadcasting studios of KCAA.
All right, you guys are live.
Studio in
All right.
Fort Lauderdale.
Sorry, I had a little mix up in the intro, but welcome into the Water Zone. Appreciate everybody calling in and taking time out to hear what we got to say and sticking around with us. I'm Rob Starr, your host, along with Miss Chris Austin from Maven's Notebook, and soon in a few moments it'll be Tara Malali coming in, who is our co-host, and trying to coordinate everybody together, and we're gonna do that. I do have a featured guest who is coming on the show later, but we want to join him in now if that's okay with him. And he's a great guy. And Chris Austin, I'll let you introduce him since you're close.
Oh, okay. This is close. Hey, well, we have Edward Ring on the show today, and he's kind enough to let me republish his commentaries on Maven's Notebook. He is the director and co-founder of the California Policy Center. I typed that in enough, I should really know it. And he's here joining us today. So welcome, Ed.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me.
I owe you a call. I hate being on the phone, so but I still owe you a call. This won't count.
Okay.
I will call you one of these days.
Yes. Well, that's mutual. I suppose I owe you a call as well. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
And just for clarification, he's Director of Energy and Water Policy at the California Policy Center. So we welcome him to the show. He was going to come on after our commercial break, but since he knows Chris Austin, I thought it would be great to have them join in and join the conversation. And we usually start off with Chris talking about issues in California water. And I know there's a recircling problem that's going on, and it's called golden mussels. And now I see that they're maybe reaching my favorite subject lately. I always wanted to find out. I joke with everybody if there's a way that we can cook them. That way, it's trying to recycle them instead of just letting them.
Yeah.
So, but I guess you can't do that. But
yeah.
So what's up? So now they're worrying about contamination in another place.
Well, the big news, the story that caught everybody's attention this week was that the Arvin Edison Water Storage District in the South San Joaquin Valley found a way to deal with these mussels by using copper, and so that's been effective. But that they use copper on adult mussels. They don't know how it works for the little ones floating around. But anyways, it's a sign that there's something, there is something that's working. I think it's using copper, you have to be careful. And if you use too much copper, that's a bad thing.
That's a poison.
Yeah. But, it says that the product that they're using is a product that's safe to use on crops. That's what they said in their announcement. So it's good that we have at least a chance at doing something about these mussels, but they have really just come in and they have spread so much faster, and they're so much better at it than any of the other invasive mussels that we've had. So it's nice that it's good that we're finding some treatments, and I'm sure that we'll probably have to find some other ways to deal with them as well, some other treatments. But it's nice to have something in the toolbox at least.
Yep. I know there's an irrigation company who makes drip irrigation who uses copper. It's infused with copper. And I don't know what the recent approval is of that. they're a good company. I'm not going to say the name, but they're a very good company. And there was some tests done a long time ago when they first came out with it and said it was kind of hazardous to the thing. And then there's another company that has an approved chemical that's in the emitters. And but it's you never know. It's just like remember the Fin diet pills they had 20 years ago, and everybody take them like they're taking this GLP and all this other stuff, and then 10 years later they find out it's not good for you. So, hopefully they can do a good test and make sure that's happening. So let's move on to some other news, which is interesting to me and sad is, Lake Powell and Lake Mead. Can they be saved? Because you're not going to be able to pump water to get electricity anymore out of these places. What are they going to do?
I do not know. Maybe that's something Edward can answer for us, because I don't know. Those reservoirs, they're circling the drain. It's not good. And Lake Mead is projected to become very, very low. And Lake Powell's in bad shape too, and there are people that say drain Lake Powell and just be done with it, although I'm not sure that that's really a workable solution, because a lot of people depend on the hydropower. But if there's not any water to run through the dams, I'm not sure that that's going to be helpful. So I don't know. I want to take advantage of Edward and say, Edward, what's your take on the Colorado River? I haven't heard you write. I've seen you write about it, but you must have some ideas.
Well, it's hard to have an idea that's going to change the weather. One thing we probably should keep in mind is, we obviously have some trends with the climate that could indicate a prolonged drought. There's been droughts we know historically that have lasted for centuries in the West and in the Southwest. So we might be, entering into something that certainly has historical precedence. On the other hand, there's what is the LA Times called it, a super El Nino coming in this winter. And I think we should probably talk about that if there's time. But, we don't know what the extent of that's going to be. It might fall into the Southwest, go inland further than just hitting California and stopping at the Sierras. And if that happens, it's not, going to solve the problem. It's going to take several years of something like that to solve the problem, in a way that where we can start to relax about it. But it might make it a little bit easier to pursue some of the other options. The deficit was, a recent report said it was 5 million acre-feet a year, but I looked into that pretty carefully the last couple of days, and it's more in the realm of 2.5 to 3 million acre-feet a year, which is a lot, of course. And there's increasing demand in the upper basin states, which is part of the reason for the deficit. And there's going to be a lot of lawsuits, but lawsuits can't, manufacture water out of thin air. I don't think they should get rid of Lake Powell, because we may be surprised, though. We may be surprised by a lot of water suddenly hitting the Colorado River watershed. They were full. Both of those reservoirs were full about 25 years ago. So, and they were built 50 years before that. So it's not like there was a sustainable amount of water for a long time. But the demand has increased over that period. There's no easy answers. I mean, the state of Arizona is looking at desalinating water from the Sea of Cortez, if you can imagine that.
Yeah.
That we might as well do that off the California coast. There's no current in the Sea of Cortez, and you really would probably have a problem with the brine I don't think are going to have the same kind of problems off the California coast.
I also think, the Salton Sea people have eyed a pipeline from the Sea of Cortez to save the Salton Sea, and the Mexican officials have not really been on board with that. I don't think they're going to be on board any better with Arizona desalinating water. But they have this transfer thing now that they can sort of buy, San Diego's water, so to speak. This exchange thing to get some more water. But
well,
yeah,
how do you get the demand down off of the Colorado River watershed? And you're bringing up something super interesting, which is that if the ratepayers in Phoenix are willing to pay the construction cost, for example, more Carlsbad type desalination plants in California, then all of the water that's, we have 800,000 to a million acre feet a year go into California's coastal cities from the Colorado River. So imagine if you could get that elsewhere. It doesn't have to be desalination. There's other ways to make up that water and give that water back to the other Colorado Basin states, and they would pay for whatever the infrastructure is that we would have to build in order to give them that water back. And then our ratepayers here in California only have to pay the operating costs. That's a win for everybody, because a municipal water district is willing to, if they buy the financing cost of construction is $1,000 an acre foot. That's easy for a municipality to afford. So there's some potential there.
So you're looking at, Chris, going back to your statement about the Salton Sea. Just so happens Patrick O'Dowd from them is going to be on the show next week. He's our featured guest for next week, and thanks to Tara and her staff for setting that up. But when you look at desal out of California, I have no problem with that. The problem is it's going to take 17 years. That's what it took.
And that's not with the Coastal Commission denying things, right? So that happens too. Every regulatory agency wants to just but hold up a minute. This is going to take a little bit more time and a lot more work.
Always.
Yeah.
Well, there's two ways of looking at these projects. There's the perfect world way, and then there's the California way. If you could have reasonable restrictions on development, reasonable permitting cycles, it doesn't take 20 years to build these things. They can be built in 5 years, and maybe it's going to take some horrible emergency to change the mentality. But we can talk all day about how it's impossible to build anything. We can also talk about, well, if we could take care of that regulatory environment and make it reasonable, there's all kinds of things we could build. Ask your guest next week about the 80-mile-long tunnel from the Pacific Ocean to the Salton Sea. You get a 200.
Oh, we don't have enough time for him to tell us about that. I love Patrick, but he will talk about that for hours. We don't have time. However, one thing I think that's interesting is the federal government sort of getting involved in the desalination in California discussion with their let's take a look at the California Coastal Commission and do a little judgment on their workforce. So that's another interesting thing that people can have a say in and should probably be more engaged in with how they're doing. So that whole thing is really fascinating. Watching the federal versus state is always interesting to see unfold.
Well, look what you got going with the Delta Tunnel. They can't get the extra $30-something million that they want to put through. So they're going to argue, let's go do something, but we don't have the money, or we can't get the money. And just like the train to nowhere.
But that's a tricky thing, because the thing is the people who oppose the tunnel will say, well, but you can take your $30 billion and you can spend it better elsewhere. But it isn't like there's this pot of $30 billion sitting in Sacramento, and we're going, what shall we do with this money? No, that's money that's going to come from bonds that are going to be repaid.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't, you can't just say that, and it's going to be hard to make the case to people in Southern California that they should be paying for regional projects happening elsewhere that may or may not benefit them. I mean, that's good. That would be a real hard sell, and it'd be hard to get it past the Proposition 218 thing. But it's going back to the Salton Sea and the Colorado River, though. That's just really a quagmire, and the Salton Sea has me just shaking my head. I've been shaking my head at that one ever since I got started in California water. The Salton Sea is a fascinating story, you know, how, oh gosh, the sky went out, Rockwood went out and cut a hole in a levee, and it ended up like flooding the Imperial Valley and created the Salton Sea. And when they finally got it patched up, so it wasn't it was no longer flowing to the Salton Sea, the people were like, hey, what do you know? We got all this drainage and leachage off our fields. We'll just dump it in here and let it flow to the sea. And so it did for so many years. And then someone went out and wanted to turn it into like a poor man's Palm Springs. So they set up the Salton City. Oh gosh, and they did for a while. They were very successful there. Like they had speedboat races and water
back in the 60s. Yeah.
Well, and nobody wants to talk about the fact that it was always intended to be an agricultural sump. Like it was never really intended to be this beautiful, pristine lake. It was always intended to be an agricultural sump, and it has no outlet. So that's why everything sits. It was never going to succeed.
And it doesn't really have any inflows.
Right. There's no inflow and there's no outflow.
And the only inflow is agricultural drainage, which, you know, back before they had the Imperial Valley farmers do something about it, they fully admitted that 1/3 of the water that they put on their fields landed in the Salton Sea. So you have all of these states that are struggling with, you know, their water uses, the Colorado use, and then you have the Imperial Valley going, hey, 1/3 water is going there. So that really made people very unhappy, and they've really gotten a lot more control over that, is my understanding, and that is why the sea is shrinking. But, you know, the Salton Sea was kind of never meant to be there. It's going to be very hard to sustain. But they are making some valiant efforts. You know, the problem is that the Colorado Delta is not really much of a delta anymore, so all the birds tend to end up at the Salton Sea. And they do quite well there. You know?
Yeah, and that's before you even get to the QSA. So that's like a whole other solid, you know.
And the fish, the tilapia, every so often end up dead, smelling on the shore. And the locals are like, oh, yeah, that happens.
I was one of those locals. I was like, oh, yeah, it's the fish off. It's fine.
Well, as the Salton Sea recedes, you know, the playa, the so-called, I guess they call that the shoreline, as it recedes, in the old days, it was just natural soil, but now it's soil that's been contaminated with nearly 100 years of agricultural runoff with pesticides and herbicides and so forth. And so when there's dust storms, which, you know, happen down there, blows the air into Palm Springs area and sometimes all the way into Los Angeles, and it's very unhealthy. It's not like, you know, dust, just natural dust. It's dust that's infused with all of these pesticides and herbicides. The Salton Sea evaporates about 1.5 million acre-feet a year, and the agricultural runoff, plus there's a little bit of natural runoff. There was an equilibrium for a long time, and as you said, that's gone. And I like the idea of a tunnel from the Pacific Ocean. That would completely solve the problem.
As long as somebody paid for it.
Yeah, well, boy.
Yeah. Right.
Get pumping that water over the coastal range.
No, you wouldn't have to pump it. You wouldn't have to pump it because it's below sea level. You could have a tunnel and it work on a siphon. It would actually generate hydropower.
Wow. Well,
it's more about the initial investment.
Yes, it would be.
Yeah,
and that would be substantial, of course.
Yep.
And the right way, and then not, and you know, the people who will oppose, because there's always people who will oppose.
100%. I think the best hope it's got is the Army Corps of Engineers feasibility study, because then it can be a spread between federal and local dollars. Like it can just that's the only way something real is going to happen there, is if it is beyond one small community trying to fix such a huge issue. Is that multiple source of both income, investment, and kind of policy.
You're absolutely right. I was going to mention with desalination, you brought up the federal role there, and there's been some studies that we've seen. The Submerged Land Act and also the Coastal Zone Management Act. Both of those acts of Congress have built into their provisions the authority for the federal government to assert control on federally owned property on the California coast, for example, and they could build these desalination plants at Vandenberg or at Camp Pendleton, Seal Beach, elsewhere. And they're, according to, obviously it would be disputed in court, but there's some pretty strong language in that federal legislation that suggests that there's not a thing that the state of California could do to stop them. And that's kind of an interesting scenario when you have an administration in Washington that's determined to help California solve water scarcity that the Californians don't seem to be able to solve themselves.
If only they could help us fund our dam repairs, I would really appreciate that. Federal government anywhere.
There's so much money. There's money in the big, beautiful bill. There's money in the Inflation Reduction Act. There's money in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law of 2021. There was the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act in 2016. There's all this unallocated billions that the federal government, the Bureau of Reclamation, has access to. It's really political. They need to pick their priorities, and the money's there.
And I just need $314 million of it. That's it. It's not a lot. It's nothing. That's budget dust.
Pocket money.
Exactly.
A rounding error.
Exactly.
So I sure would like to see us address dams, because while we have our problems in California, we have them all over this country, and it would be great to see us really looking into some of these bad dams before they become catastrophes,
Yeah.
With these heavy downpours.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I looked up, there's 60 dams in California that are currently in poor repair, and that's not including, our dam isn't in poor repair. It's not even one of the 60, and it's requiring seismic retrofitting because these dams were built in the 60s and 50s and 40s and 20s. And the requirements, the building requirements were just so different and fairly, but you have to then actually do the work to make them up to current code. And that's not cheap and cannot be afforded by just normal folks who are trying to make ends meet. Not in today's day and age.
Well, it's just like changing the broken pipes,
Exactly.
And anywhere else. I mean, you got 100 years of pipe that need to be changed and checked. And it just keeps going on and on and on, and there's no real solution to it. But one solution, Chris, you had in your blog about fire spotting satellites that they just launched some.
Oh, yeah. Try and quicken up the fire response. Yeah, we're getting very technical in fire tech, technologies, the satellites, and there's also cameras that watch now, with AI to alert, and they have these crews called the Helitack crews, and they put firefighters on a helicopter, and when they get the start of a fire, the firefighters go out, they parachute down and put out the fire, and they've been very successful in taking care of fires quickly before they get out of control.
Absolutely.
My son wanted to be on the Helitack crew.
They're also deploying drone helicopters now. So, for example, when there's high winds and the manned helicopters, it's too hazardous, they can send drone helicopters in to drop fire retardant, for example. But, we've gotten better every decade at finding and putting out forest fires. But if we don't bring back logging to California, responsibly managed logging, the forest density, and this is pretty well documented. There's studies from the University of Merced and UC Davis and the USGS. The density of the forest is 3 to 5, in some cases 10 times higher than what's historically normal. And it's not, climate change may be a factor, but the dominant factor is these trees are overcrowded. They're competing for the same amount of nutrients and light and water, and they're stressed and they're dry, and there's a lot of fuel, way more than there was 100 years ago. And our logging industry in California is a quarter of the size it was as recently as the mid-1980s. And that's a big problem you have to do something about that, along with getting better at putting out the fires, or the fuel's just going to get bigger and bigger, and you're still going to keep having these catastrophic fires.
Yeah, the forest management's a big deal, and I know in the last couple of years they've been trying to address it even more, but it really hasn't moved a whole lot. And I think the satellite things that they put up is awesome. I think they need that technology, and if they can spot it instantaneously or within a minute or two, I mean, that can save 10,000 or more acres and homes and lives and everything else. I think it's really important that they keep on doing that. And we had on a couple of weeks ago, we had a gentleman who was president of a company who uses subsonic audio to put out fires, and that was pretty interesting. But I like people coming up with
CDs yet.
Yeah, but I like the idea that somebody is working on something, and and it's the private sector. That's great. I would like to see more private and public partnerships in some of these endeavors, and make those move faster than they can. Just like we talked about how long it takes to get permits and everything to do grabbing water, desalination. I mean, if there's ways to slick ways to figure out how do we move things forward in a good way and identify what the top issues are in the state or in the country, and have people, put the pencil to the paper, do it, and commit to doing it. And if it works, great. If they can't get it done, you switch them out. I mean, what do you do? I joked earlier about the train to nowhere that California has. Look how long it's been. Look at the cost out now at what it is.
I don't want to look. It hurts my feelings.
Well,
you talk about these innovations, and that's really something that California is still really good at, and it's exciting. And we don't know where the next breakthrough is going to come from. Whether it's water or energy or transportation, and that train. I mean, California is really not that densely populated, and to build something that expensive when the road is the future. We have these advanced autonomous vehicles that are coming along. We've got passenger drones that are just around the corner. And, it's questionable that it may be kind of an obsolete technology to build a big, fast train like that.
You're right. Absolutely. That's the thinking that needs to happen. And what I appreciate, I'm plugging you now, Ed, because that's what I like about reading what you put out all the time, because you get right into the weeds and give more information than most people can even understand and get. And I think that's a great thing. And we appreciate you coming on the show. We still got another segment to do with you, and we're going to do that in a few minutes. We got to take a commercial break though for a minute, and then come right back. Chris, we'll talk to you next. You'll be back next week with us, and we'll be happy. And remember, to our listeners, go to mavensnotebook.com, become a subscriber. It's an awesome way to get your California water news every day, every morning. It gives inside tracking to things that are happening. She knows everybody and everybody in the industry, and that makes it good for us. And if you want to be a sponsor of the show, she's willing to take that, and it is a 503 charity, so you get the tax deduction for that. So, Chris, thanks a lot for joining us today. Or if you want to stick around, I'm not trying to push you off. If you want to stick around with us and Ed, that's fine. Just let me know. But we got to take a commercial break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
KCAA.
Water is one of the biggest expenses for communities, HOAs, universities, golf courses, and resorts. So keeping those costs under control, especially when rates are increasing while water supplies are being reduced, are often essential to a customer's survival. Managing water requires multiple skills, which is why it's been complicated and difficult until now. AquaTrack brings multiple skills and technologies together to help large system users conserve outdoor water and improve the health of their landscapes. AquaTrack's professionals are certified landscape water managers and certified landscape irrigation auditors. The company offers audit services, upgrade advice, technical expertise, and water use monitoring. We already manage irrigation water for the largest homeowner associations in Arizona, and we're prepared to bring our knowledge and experience to help others, including landscapers and designers. Give us a call and hear how AquaTrack saved one HOA some 430 million gallons of water and $200,000 in annual water expenses. AquaTrack is Arizona-based, and you can reach us at 623-594-8689. That's 623-594-8689.
SiteOne is here to help you build and maintain outstanding irrigation systems from the ground up without drying up your resources. That's why we're excited to introduce Rainbird's Soak Up the Savings. From July 1st to August 31st, discover a deluge of savings on Rainbird exclusively from SiteOne. Spend between $350 and $749 on eligible Rainbird products and take advantage of a 5% discount on your order. Spend between $750 and $1,500 and you get a 10% discount. Rainbird, renowned for industry-leading technology and reliability, has all the products you need for an exceptional irrigation install. And together with SiteOne, you can ensure the best job for the best price possible. So head over to your nearest SiteOne branch and explore our extensive selection of Rainbird products specially selected to meet all your irrigation needs. And remember, this exclusive promotion is available for a limited time only from July 1st to August 31st. Don't miss out on this opportunity to elevate your irrigation projects without breaking the bank. Stop by your local SiteOne branch or visit siteone.com/soakupthesavings.
Southern California's Inland Talk Express is KCAA.
Okay, welcome back to the second half. Sorry, we had a little technical glitch at the studio. We got that all working. So, Ed, why don't you continue? We were talking about this economics of the floating offshore winds and what's going to do with the wind tunnels. Is it worth the effort to do it or not worth the effort to do it? I mean, I read what you wrote, but kind of give a little background so our listeners can understand what that we're talking about.
Yeah, as I was starting to say, there are some innovations that might sound a little far-fetched that I think we should give a chance to and wait and see. And floating offshore wind, in my opinion, is not one of them. California has, first of all, we can talk about wind energy in general, the resources required to do it, the environmental impact of those rotors, going through the air, and they kill bats, they kill insects, they kill birds, and they don't look very good, and they make a lot of noise, and they use an amazing amount of steel and concrete. But and during the construction phase, it's really bad evidence that these offshore channels. These wind turbine towers into the shallow water. But California doesn't have shallow water, so it's even further compounded in terms of the feasibility and the impact. California's wind turbines are proposed to float 20 miles offshore in 4,000 feet of water. They want to put up 12, and this is all from the scoping plan that's part of the state of California's energy strategy. They want to put up 12 megawatt wind turbines, each of them 12 megawatts, which means it would probably be at least 800 feet from the tip of the rotor to the water line. And then that's a pretty big structure. That's almost as tall as the Eiffel Tower. That's nearly 3 Statues of Liberty from the water line to the tip of the torch, stacked on top of each other. I mean, it's almost the length of a supercarrier if you turned it on its end. They're gigantic, and they want 25 gigawatts of capacity, which is more than 2,000 of these things would have to be tethered on pontoons in 4,000 feet of water. I mean, just think about the cost and the impact of that many gigantic wind turbines off the coast. So if you take their own numbers, again, this is from state documents, and you look at what just the financing cost would be to build and install these wind turbines, and then to upgrade the transmission lines, to get all that high voltage electricity to shore and get it onto the backbone. And there's no, the grid doesn't go to Morro Bay. The main north-south power grid for California is not directly hooked to Morro Bay or Humboldt Bay. Those are relatively remote locations on the California coast that they want to put these offshore from. So there's a tremendous cost, billions of dollars, to connect these wind turbines as well as to build them. So if you just finance those billions at a 4% 20-year bond, you'd be looking at about 20 cents a kilowatt hour just to pay the financing cost for the construction. Now, that's not the whole price. I mean, the wholesale price of electricity, which is what that represents, is only about 5 cents a kilowatt hour. This is 4 times as much. You still have all of the last mile distribution. You still have all of the utility costs. In other words, the retail price in California is many times what the wholesale price is. So when you have a wholesale price that's already 4 times what it currently goes for in California, you still have to tack on another 20 cents. You're looking at roughly 40 cents a kilowatt hour for floating offshore wind, and I think that's a best case number. Yeah. So why are we doing this? It'll be a permanent economic drain on an environmental mess. Think about the mess that's going to make.
Well, you even got maintenance.
Where's the coastal commission? You can't even put a little rock wall in front of your house on the beach without them suing the homeowner. But they're silent on this. Yeah. You read you read the reports that came from the Coastal Commission, which I did, and I didn't read the whole thing because it's like 900 pages or something. It's not, I forget exactly. It's hundreds of pages. It's very dense. There's not a single mention of whales or cetaceans. Do a keyword search on whale or cetacean. Not a single word. Now, how are these great, the whales that migrate up and down, north and south every year along the California coast, going to deal with 2 or 3 tethering cables on 2,000 or more gigantic wind turbines? How's that going to work? Yeah. The whole thing's a mess.
Well, you also got to include maintenance costs for the whole systems, yes. And that's got to be another big bundle out of that. And
you're just trying to rile him up. Is that your goal? Just make him like frothy? I'm just saying.
This is one of the worst
a mess.
ideas. This is one. The bullet train is a wonderful idea by comparison. This is the worst proposal that I think the state of California has ever come up with. And I do not want to start ranting, but it's kind of frustrating when every time you criticize a project like this, they say, but it's to combat climate change. We're not supposed to destroy our ocean in order to save ourselves from climate change, and we're not supposed to destroy our economy. There's other ways to generate clean electricity if we're that concerned about climate change.
Absolutely. It just doesn't seem to change. It's going to be interesting, in California with whoever's going to be governor and what their plans are and what they would go on. And I was talking to you, Ed, and the team knows that we're trying to set up whether it's a debate or a one-on-one with both Becerra and Hilton to come in and discuss the topic. And we're going to work with Aqua, is also going to be part of the hosting of that show, if they agree to come on. And I hope they do. And we're not going to try to trick them in anything. We just want to ask the questions that everybody wants to know the answer to. Because most of the time when you watch on TV or you read something, they spin the words, and when they finish with it, for me, I don't understand a word they said. I don't know what sense
because they didn't say anything.
That's right. That's right. And that's shameful because all the tax money that they collect. I don't live in California anymore. I moved here a couple of years ago, 6 years, out in the Phoenix area, and lots of reasons. One, taxes for home tax was ridiculous there. I was paying like $18,000 a year for property tax. Here it's $4,200. Gas is cheaper here. Mm-hmm. Electricity is cheaper here, and you work all your life. You want to live nice and maintain a nice structure. But look at all the money they want. California. I went a couple of meetings with the Senate and the Assembly over my years, and one, they wanted to have a tax that if you leave California and go to another state, they were going to tax you. Then they also wanted to put a chip in your car to track the mileage you drive per year and charge you 5 cents a mile for that, in addition to the gas tax that they have, which is the highest in the nation. And it just never stops. And the reason I got hooked on your stuff is because you go into detail that I don't read novels because I go on plane trips overseas, and my wife buys me a 650 page book, just like that 900-page report. You don't want to read. You want to get to the meat of it. As an engineer, I want to know what the facts are immediately. I don't want to go through 5 hours of reading a book to find out something that you could tell me on 2 pages. But that's me. But I think the rest of the country wants to be like that way. They want to understand and get the feedback immediately. Just like how much water you use in your house. Now with all these new meters that are coming out with, it's like going to the gas station. You fill your car up and you can see on the dial how much gas is going in your car instantaneously, real time. I want to see the same thing happen with water. I know you can go on different accounts with different water agencies and download it afterwards. But I'd love to see that in real time. So you can see what your meter is doing right then and there, so people know. But it takes technology, and I want to see that, get 10,000 times bigger than it is. But I also want to see the government decide and identify what are the main problems that they got. Say there's 50 of them, 50 major problems. I want to see a list that shows number 1 through number 50. And I want to see what the plan is for taking care of the first 3. And when those are done, you move down to the next 4, 5, and 6 until they get them done. I don't see that. I know there's so many that all play together that you can't just do 1, 2, or 3. But I don't feel that they're moving forward in a lot of these things. It's like NATO. Instead of the term for NATO, North American Treaty Organization, I call it no action, talk only. Because every time they go for a bill or something, it just keeps going on and on and on and on, and nothing happens. And then after they pass it, somebody doesn't want it, and they start redoing it again. It's just crazy for me to see that and go through it. But
you mentioned the water meters and having more information. I think all of that's coming, and I think it's getting probably easier and easier to implement.
I agree.
From a cost standpoint.
Is it getting easier? Have you ever spoken with a farmer to try to put a meter that's the flow meter on his land? He's super friendly, by the way. He definitely does not come at you with a shotgun going like, "Why are you on my property?"
Well, I meant the technology's getting.
Oh, the technology, not the personality.
But the point I was going to make is that there's, you can have demand management, or you can have supply management, and I think that we've kind of gotten almost everything we're going to get out of demand management. I mean, even the farmers that you're talking about recognize that there's not a lot of water left in some of these aquifers. We have to figure out how to get more water or use less water. And the emphasis has been, I think, we've had a priority of using less water long enough, and we're getting to the point of diminishing returns. And there's all kinds of ways that we can invest in projects to increase our water supply. The amount, the farmers frequently talk about how much water goes out to the ocean every year. But you can also go to the Public Policy Research Institute, for example, and look at their data. You can look at data from the California Data Exchange Center that the Department of Water Resources maintains. And you can see for yourself that, especially like the last 4 years, pick a number, 12 million acre feet, 15 million acre feet. Say it's 15 million acre feet. That's how much we need to flush through the Delta every year. It's more than enough for healthy habitats. Why aren't we figuring out ways to get the rest of that water, which, would be 10, 15 million acre feet in the last 4 years? We could have had as an additional harvest of water from the delta if we could figure out a safe way to extract it. And there are proposals, not just the tunnel, there's additional proposals. There's a lot of ways to get more water safely out of the delta without harming those ecosystems, because there's so much water that goes through the delta in wet years. And we should be harvesting that water, because you're not talking about saving 100,000 or 250,000 acre feet. You're talking about another 5 or 10 million acre feet over the course of a few years that we could be recharging our aquifers with and irrigating with and rehydrating our cities with, and being more prepared for when droughts do come back. And we need to be thinking more about increasing our water supply. I think there's other ways to do it. Large-scale desalination is another huge opportunity that's not discussed nearly enough. But the biggest variable is the delta. And there, if we could figure out how to get more water out of the delta, you're talking about millions of acre feet without harming the environment.
One thing that, and in fact, that's I know that's a lot of the focus of the new water plan that's kind of being crafted at the Department of Water Resources, and I enjoyed the opportunity to be able to participate in one of their study sessions. And what I found really interesting about that is I love the idea of new water sources. Obviously, I'm in water, so yes, please. But one of the things I said that I felt, and I still feel really passionate about, is the idea of a financial plan to support these major projects, because projects, kind of just ad hoc building towards what you're talking about, which is abundance, without any kind of financial structure or plan, is just destined to fail. And I can't see a way around that, even with kind of everything that everyone's doing everywhere. And if we're trying to get to this 9 million acre feet, which is sort of the number that I know has been tossed around as increasing our water supply by 9 million acre feet, one of which is through demand reduction, which I was just like, that's not adding water. I mean, it sort of does, but it's not, we're not going to be able to conserve to a place where that is even relevant in a 9 million acre feet conversation. And so what does that look like with no legislative, with $10 million, or even better, $1 million grant? Like, how is a $1 million grant for a water project going to yield 9 million acre feet? Like,
never going to happen.
The grant structure doesn't exist to be able to support the kind of projects that we need, that you're talking about, to make this possible.
Well, we have to look, you're right. And, the first thing is projects need to be less regulated. We need reasonable regulations. I don't think anybody who's reasonable doesn't think we need reasonable regulations, but they're unreasonable in California, and they're doubling the cost. So we could get, let's say we need $100 billion. We fix the regulatory environment. We only need $50 billion. Obviously, I'm just throwing rough numbers around,
course,
but you understand the point. So let's start right there. And then, we have to recognize that the federal government and the state government have made investments like this in past decades and in past centuries in this country for the interstate highway system, for example, or for the original great wave of projects that the Bureau of Reclamation performed, 100 years ago. And we have to recognize that there's a return on investment that benefits society. That's not something that you should merely say, if the ratepayers can't afford this, we shouldn't do it. We should be making the investment because it's going to help the state, it's going to help the country, and we should understand. I mean, you weren't going to recover all that money when we built the interstate. That was something that we knew was in the national interest, so we built them. And we have to look at water infrastructure the same way, especially because we've got so much deferred maintenance that's coming along.
I absolutely could not agree more. And in fact, one of the things that is critical in the let's build more water piece is the no losing of current water storage, because we don't want to maintain or build those. That's less sexy and exciting, like repairing a diversion or repairing pipes is not necessarily sexy, but if you don't have those pipes, you can't distribute your new water. If you don't have those pieces of infrastructure that you currently are maintaining, then the new water is just replacing water lost. So that's another piece of this puzzle that really needs to be addressed. And especially when we think about what kinds of projects really need to be built, I feel like that's such a critical component of identifying what projects should be the priority. And when you talk about regulation, I mean, it's regulators against each other, creating mixed signals, different like this regulatory agency says one thing, this one says you have to have this other thing, and if you have this other thing, then this regulator says you can't be permitted. It's crazy. And then someday they wake up on a Sunday and this regional guy goes, you know what, I don't like your project, so we're gonna make it this thing. And you're just like, what is even happening?
Well, that's right, and we have to fix the regulatory environment, and it's easy to say that, but you've just brought up a little bit more detail relating to the challenge we face with that. Yeah, and you also said we have to pick good projects, and good projects aren't always economical. It's not economical to recycle our wastewater. It's you're looking at it's as expensive as desalination nowadays. So does that mean we're not going to recycle our wastewater? We're going to still continue to pour 400,000 acre-feet of nitrogen-rich effluent into the San Francisco Bay every year? No, we have to spend $20 to $30 billion to fix that. But then again, if we could reform the regulatory environment and pick the right kinds of projects, like maybe some kind of wetlands treatment instead of reverse osmosis, maybe we can do it for $10 billion or less. So we have to look at all of those projects. And there's one more thing I think we really don't want to ever forget. We're in an era right now of extraordinary innovation, and construction costs, the trend for what it costs to do big projects, ought to be dropping. The costs should be dropping because we're figuring out how to do stuff with new materials and with automation, and there's ways that we can build things nowadays where perhaps we can get the cost to do a big project down to a fraction of what it might cost in a more labor-intensive, more capital-intensive era when we didn't have technologies that could leverage our resources.
You're absolutely right. And I just hope the new governor, who that may be, will have some ponies and do what he needs to do to correct all these things and put in place a team that can help drive it further. And all those things that you said are common sense. And
I think there's a good momentum. I mean, I think it would be a little bit premature to start being super optimistic, but I think we might have turned the corner in terms of a recognition and a consensus and a nonpartisan consensus that we have to be looking at supply more and that demand management is not enough, and we have to be able to streamline some of these permitting environments, or we're not going to get anything done. I think there's more recognition of that than ever, although it's a little early to say we completely turned the corner.
Well, you're right on that. All right, we're coming to a close. We got to turn it over to in about another minute. I do want to let our people know that they should go look at your books that you have, and they can order them anywhere, pretty much. Correct?
Yeah, Amazon's your best bet.
That's right. That's where I ordered mine from, and like I said, I just started it. I only got a couple pages, but I got it yesterday afternoon, so I have to have time to go through it. But I do want to finish it, and then I want to have you back and talk about some other issues that you can give your opinion on. I think that's really important to learn more and give a chance for our listeners to understand what's really going on in the world of water. So thank you very much, Rob. Yeah. Thank you very much, and I will certainly contact you shortly to set up a next one to come in and do another topic and spend a little bit more time with that. And again, we do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. So for our listeners, thanks for tuning in to us. Sorry we had a little issue at the beginning with hearing on our end from the broadcast, so we kind of misstepped it, but we're back on track, and join us next week. But the most important thing that we got to ask and tell you is,
if you like green,
you got to have blue. Don't forget that. So have a good weekend. Stay cool. And it's raining here, but hope you're going to be in nice, cool, decent weather. Have a good one. Have a good weekend. And we'll talk to you next week. Thanks for joining us.
NBC News.